Welcome to DEIJ Hot Takes. My name is Daryl Sinclair, and this is the podcast where we discover the bold and transformative ideas shaping diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice work today. In this episode, we are joined by Tiwana Merritt, who is the JEDI Steering Committee co-chair at the American International School of Johannesburg. Tiwana, thank you so much for joining us today. If you could please share with us the DEIJ hot take that's guiding your work.
Yes, DEIJB must be supported by internal self-work and self-care.
Thank you. So this is a take that I'm very excited about for our DEIJB practitioners. Many people I speak to discuss this topic, so an explicit take on this will be really helpful. Could you take us through what this means in the context of DEIJB work, why you feel this is a hot take, and how you realize this in the work that you do?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Daryl, for having me on and inviting me to this. I'm super excited. That is a lot of things to answer. So I also want to start off by saying that my main role at my school is the Service Learning and Community Engagement Coordinator. So I bring a lot of DEIJB work to that space. You'll hear me use the words interchangeably, or the acronyms interchangeably, because at my school we call it JEDI. But in the international space, I usually go with DEIJB. I would say that in my work, this is fairly important for me because I do a lot of work with students, and because they are the whole purpose of us being in schools and supporting their growth and learning and to develop into amazing humans who are going to go out in the world and continue to do great things. It's really important to me that they go there with all the knowledge and understanding of the world around them, how they are responsible for contributing to that in a positive way. Lately, I've been doing a lot of work with student groups, and one of my student groups is a DEIJB group, and we've started an international group, I guess, of the African region of students. And I started this work with my dear friend, Constance Collins. And we felt that there's a need for students, particularly Black and Brown students, who were really calling out for spaces to talk and to be and to share and learn and grow from each other. And the events that took place back in 2020, 2021 were really the things that propelled me, particularly on the path of the self-care work. I started engaging a lot online with other international educators working in different spaces. We started to recognize, me and a few others, that there's a group of people who were feeling really isolated. A lot of Black and Brown educators in these spaces, they're the only at their school, and they were coming to these meetings. We were originally just having a meeting for Black and Brown people. The person who decided to facilitate that, Sandra Poole, asked me, well, what do you think we could focus on for the next meeting? Would you like to, in the initial meetings, would you like to lead something? And I'm like, maybe. And we just started to talk about the things that we noticed. And one of the big things that we noticed was there are a lot of people in what seemed to be trauma from their spaces. And so we decided to kick off doing a self-care group, and we invited a couple of other practitioners to join us. So Miss Cheryl Ann Weeks and Dominique Dallas joined us. And so the four of us formed a little co-led team of self-care Sundays, where we met with educators from different spaces, BIPOC educators, and provided a space and provided a little bit of structure for us to be in community together, to learn and grow from each other, and also to figure out how can we move past some of the things that were causing us triggers and harm. And in that work, I found a lot of self-growth personally, and being able to check in with myself and think about, well, what are the things that I'm doing in my space that I need to have a timeout from, or that I need to have more awareness around. And so not only was it a place of being able to provide the space, but it was a really great space of growth for me. And I, assuming for the others that partook in this space with us. I can't speak enough about that. And I know I'm saying this as also a reminder, which is why I put it as my hot take, is that I need to be mindful of doing self-care and the internal work of what it means to be in these spaces outside of your home country, generally working where you are definitely marginalized. Some of us are occupying multiple identities, and that takes a toll on you. And sometimes you don't have anyone in your school system that you can turn to or in your surrounding community. And I was pretty shocked at the number of adults who were feeling this way, and feeling isolated. And the fact that we were also under a major, world event of being confined to our homes or being confined to very small spaces, it made it even more important, I think, that we provide an outlet for people to come and share and just be in community together. And there were lots of people thanking us for the space. And sometimes we'd only have a few people showing up. And so we think, oh, are we really doing this is this worth our time and our effort? But we'd always get positive reinforcement for those that did come, that yes, this is worth the time and space. So even if you just give the space to one or two people, it's time well spent. And that was the ultimate goal, is for us to support others and support people in our community. So I'm a big fan of self-care.
Yeah, and with the space that you've made available there, that's a really important concept, because it's not necessarily that people have to do something, but the opportunity to do something. Now, some questions which have come to mind as you've been speaking in our conversation before. When you speak of self-care work and you speak about the space that you've created, could you share with us what some of the successes of this are? What does it look like once a person, especially a person like yourself, who's responsible or has taken a leadership role in some of this DEIJB work, what does self-care look like as an activity, and maybe what are some signs of success for self-care?
So I would say one of the signs of success is going out and getting the support that you think you need. I think we ran a series of sessions talking about therapy and what that means for the Black community, and how historically this has been something that we didn't feel we had access to. A lot of people talk about that being, oh, that's for rich white folks, or we deal with our problems at home, or we deal with our problems in the church, and that kind of narrative. And so talking about changing that narrative for this generation and those to come, and just being able to share openly with each other that this is something that we all found value in, we found important to do. And I know I started partaking in therapy during that period of time. So for me, it was a real shift in how I saw self-help and self-care. That is a way of taking care of yourself. I'm a pretty verbal and vocal person, so generally I get my feelings out by being in dialogue with others, talking to people. And so therapy shouldn't be a big stretch for me to do. But again, when you have those historical stereotypes and norms within your community, it's really hard to break free of those. And sometimes you don't even know they exist, right? You're not even conscious of them. Another really core example of not myself practicing this, but me helping to guide another colleague towards this. I have a colleague who was African, and she felt she was really being harmed in our workspace, and she tolerated and put up with it and dealt with it until she finally told me, I'm leaving. And I was devastated. And she's like, it's because of you I'm leaving. And I'm like, but I don't want you to go. What do you mean? But she said, you made me realize how much harm I'm dealing with and how much work and self-care I need to have, and I can't do it in this space. Like, she was slowly deteriorating in the workspace. And so she took herself out of it. And I thought it took a certain amount of bravery and courage to do that. And so although I was very sad that she was deciding to step away from our school system, I completely understood. If someone tells you that they have to change everything about who they are when they arrive at the gate of the school for 8 years, then that's a problem.
I mean,
And
thank you
so,
for raising those points. I mean, firstly, I thank you for your bravery. I mean, bravery is the wrong word, I'm sure, but in sharing. So I'm also a massive advocate for therapy. I do therapy myself, and I think it is a necessary part to the work I'm doing. I love what you said about dialogue. Very much speaking about this podcast and in being a opportunity to reach out to people and have some very affirming conversations, and also create these short expressions of how people approach their work. And both of them are critical. So in providing space for those dialogues to take place, while still advocating for more explicit and professionally led forms of self-care such as therapy, is central. And you've kind of a question I had bubbling in my mind to do with, when we're reflecting, at what point do we decide to step away? And of course that's different for everyone, but I love how you pointed out it's making a decision about how much do you feel that you're being true to yourself, and you're able to be within that space. And if you are able to be, what harm is coming to you for doing that? And at what point can you decide, I'm happy with this, in whatever way that you view and you engage with the challenges you have in your life? And at what point do you go, actually, I can't trust in this community to make space for me, so I'm going to find a community that does. And I think, again, that's something incredibly powerful. Now, I'm going to tighten things up here, and I'm going to say, or ask you, with what you've shared so far, what would you feel is like a key takeaway you would want someone listening to you right now to leave this episode thinking about? What's maybe a resource, piece of advice, a reflective question, but something people could take away from them to guide some of their journey with regards to equity work and supporting their communities?
I think it depends on your personality type and what entry points you would use to get into any type of work. For me, COVID, one of the blessings out of that time was a time to read and reflect and to grow internally, and then have the space in the international community to sit in dialogue and sit in conversations with people who look like me. Some people shared my identity, some people did not. And I feel like that was a transformative period for me. So doing a lot of reading, like My Grandmother's Hands was a great book for me because it talked about this generational trauma and how this trauma exists in our DNA. And I felt like prior to that, I was like, oh, that kind of stuff is like kind of hokey. But it made me realize, when I get triggered by something, or I all of a sudden get very emotional, that is my deep-seated trauma. Or my mom does something to upset me. I have so much deep-seated generational trauma. And after reading a book like that, it really made me go, okay, now I understand all these new facets of myself. And I didn't know where those were coming from. I didn't know if my gut, why is my gut constricting, or why is it expanding? Why do I feel anxious around these people or this certain experience? And taking the moment to check in with that, with yourself, and sitting in that, it can be really, really challenging. And what it reveals or opens up to us, some people don't want to know, right? And I think if you don't have support in place and you don't have structures to help guide you through those things, it can be pretty tough. It can be
I
very
can.
tough. And hearing, people like yourself who've decided to step away from certain things that are not bringing them absolute joy, or not giving them space to do these other things. And one of the key things that came up for folks in our self-care groups is that we come from communities where we're like, some of us are like one step out of poverty, right? So we also have people who are relying on us for funds, or we feel like we cannot move or we cannot leave. There were a number of people said, I cannot leave my job because I need this money, or I need this, that, or the other. And we hang on to these material things thinking that they are going to eventually bring us, the joy and the pleasure and the end all be all that we're looking for. But really, as we were speaking about before this recording, you can find so much greater joy, and you realize how simply you can live and how little you can live on monetarily than you
Mm.
thought you could. Once you decide to just let that go and take the leap, I think that we could invite so much more joy into our lives if we all just took the time and energy that we're spending on trying to get ahead to actually sit in self-reflection and think about what are the most important things that are going to bring me joy and happiness. I think we'd be surprised at what the answer would be, but I don't know if we'd be brave enough to face it.
A really brilliant ending message there, focusing on our own happiness and what actually makes us fulfilled, giving us space to sit in the experiences we have and identify how and perhaps why we feel that way, which might be supported by some exploratory reading. I'll put those recommendations and some of my own actually in the links down below. Thank you so much for sharing with us and with our listeners. Everything you said, I will share, and also where people can connect with you, Tiwana. Thank you for watching and listening, and I will see you in the next episode of DEIJ Hot Takes. Thank you so much, Tiwana.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much. Bye.